Selectmen meeting of 7/18/2023. This meeting is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Healy's executive order. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. As a preliminary matter, I will introduce the members attending this meeting. So I'm Bob Springett, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. John Jeffries.
John Jeffries, present.
Robin Hunter.
Present.
We also have two town administrators, Michael Blanchard. Stay present.
Present.
Carl Valente.
I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mona de Cecilio. Thank you. That's done. I'm assuming there were no citizens' comments since I don't see any citizens on the call. So
Mr. Havlin's on the call.
yeah, but he had to go someplace.
Okay.
So yes, Dave Haviland is also attending the meeting. Thank you, Robin. So 1.1, continuation of FY24 goals and objectives discussion. So I'm assuming people have this spreadsheet that we sort of worked with. Dave, I've introduced you as well to the audience.
Oh, great.
Just in case they were wondering who you were.
Michael, do you know who I am?
I do. So I had put what I thought was a consensus view of what the priorities were from our last meeting. And those are outlined, in red P's. There were also a couple of items on there that I thought were medium, just to put on the spreadsheet as medium, not realizing that there'd probably be no way in heck we were going to get there. So I'm just going to go from right to left on the spreadsheet.
Bob, do you want me to share, or should somebody share it? So if people decide to watch the meeting on the recording, they can see what we're looking at.
I think Cam has a copy of it. I think Dave has a copy of it.
Okay.
So I think we're good. What I don't like is you put that up and I can't see anybody.
Okay.
So on the starting at the end column, I see as the priority there is hail. Yes, no, maybe so.
Yes.
Are there any other items on that thing that people see as a priority?
Well, the 3 to 5 is a matter of a work in progress.
Yeah, I see it as an M, John.
Yeah.
What
Same
about
with water sustainability? We're just waiting on the recommendation, right?
Yeah, well, there's the final, there is no recommendation. It's kind of a report.
Okay.
And the final study is they're going through a modeling, which we can't do. The consultants are doing this modeling exercise to try and give the town a sense of what the capacity of the aquifer is. Because that's the only way you can get a sense of what the water is. And then it's just a matter of education and various options. What we set out to do is to tell the town what the potential options would be if there was no capacity in the aquifer.
So it's an information education exercise.
Right. And so for us to know, and to keep looking at it, like what's the capacity of the aquifer, how many additional homes have gone in, and each time a development goes in, to understand what that impact is on the aquifer.
All right, so from a project initiation, it's almost done.
Right, and then we'll put together a report and it's education.
Okay, so you want me to
And maybe,
put
and maybe a follow-up, but you know, it depends.
okay. Do you want me to stick an M on that one?
Um,
Just let it go.
what's an M for again?
Just say that, so it's a second priority.
It's
It's essentially done.
it's in progress. Yeah, I mean, you could put an M next to it.
Okay. Staffing, I have as, are there any other issues there?
So what about the DCC? Is that an M as well? Because it's
Yeah,
a
that's in
functional,
progress.
this is
I would
what
put
it
an
is.
M on that.
Okay,
I mean, it's, I attended the, sort of the kickoff construction meeting. It seems like these guys know, as we've heard, they're very well respected. They have their act together. I think this is just similar to this, to the water issue. It's in progress. We just have to follow the plan. But I don't think we have to dedicate any resources to it right now, other than what we have. So staffing I have as a P. I'm sure that's a shared objective. My only concern on the staffing, and I don't have it highlighted, is we really need to be much more rigorous about the onboarding, staff training process. We have a tendency to throw people into the fire and do the best we can, and mainly because we've been shorthanded. But I really think that requires more attention. If we hire new people, they should be supervised on a regular basis, and they should get the support they need to do the work that we hired them for, at a minimum. And I was talking with Kyle yesterday, who is our new treasurer, who was a very young guy, a very ambitious guy, and a very good guy. And I asked him if we got him the help that he needed. He said somewhat. So I think that requires looking into. Just because I went to the meeting yesterday to greet Mike.
well, I mean, maybe this is one of Robin's goals.
Let's go, who's?
Robin, the HR director.
Yeah, I don't know where it fits. I mean, it sounds like it should be part of the HR process, yes. So maybe we could tee that one up. And that just doesn't go for just sort of the treasurer, that goes for new hires in general. So it should be a sort of a general process. Okay, bylaw changes. The only one I changed on my original sheet was the one about eliminating employees reporting to volunteers. I've thought about that a lot. I've listened, Robin, I know you've written a couple of times that you worry about this from a town perspective. And I was just wondering if we could, rather than make a radical change here, just split responsibility between the staff who are reporting to volunteer boards. On one hand, sort of the product or business side, they would look to the committee who they work for direction. On the administrative side, maybe that should be centralized in the town administrator.
So the way I view this again is an HR process, and Mike could work with Robin and we could send out information to the boards that the committees that, you know, these individuals report to, and just talk about, you know, what we would like the new process to look like.
Carl, this is a bylaw, right?
You can't, Bob, you have to go to a town meeting to change the
I
bylaw.
know you do. I know you do.
Right.
So, you know, you could start by a process change.
Well, we tried that with the planning board.
Yeah, but there were other factors that played into that. So, you know, now we have an HR director, we have a new town administrator, and
We have an old one too.
Well, his email said he's gone back to finance director, so.
Yeah.
I
Interim
prefer
finance
to think of him as seasoned, not old.
Season, I like that.
So
Yeah.
you,
Okay, so we'll make that, that'll be another one for the HR director.
right, I think there are a bunch of policies that we should begin to, especially given, hopefully there will be a new town planner.
Yeah,
And, I would say if you approach this as a policy and you worked with the committees, and I believe that is Mike's goal to, be known to the committees, then I think we can be successful.
John?
I agree. It's the nature of things is, Bob, it's taking longer to do everything. It's not getting shorter. And it's just see, I don't, there's lots of reasons to unpack there, but yeah. It's a process.
It's a process and you need staff, and it's depth. It's building a foundation. And once you get the foundation built, things will take quicker. But right now we're building the foundation.
So we were able to do it with the planning, land use planner. We've not been able to do it with the cemetery individual. And I don't know if we have. I know, I think we could talk to Chris Bolin and Mark and see if that goes. Are there any other positions?
Well, again, ask Carl, but Mark has been phenomenal, taking direction from Carl, helping filling gaps where needed. Right, Carl? Mark.
He did a great job on the COVID task force as well.
Yeah,
The question is, will Chris Bolin sort of split the responsibility, right?
Well, if I could just interject, my understanding, talking with Chris Dwelly, is Recreation was willing to move their field staff, the people who maintain,
Right,
over
to
to
DPW.
DPW. But they wanted it to be with cemetery going in as well.
Right.
Like they didn't want to go on their own. And the cemetery commissioners still need some convincing. They were less inclined to do that.
Yeah, okay, so I see that similarly. It's sort of a negotiation. And maybe we, so we could put a line under the DPW about moving the staff, if you'd like. From Park and Rec and Cemetery under the.
Right.
Okay,
But Bob,
yeah,
fun fact, 2019 to 2020, goals and objectives, second item, cross-training and improved departmental accountability.
yes. All these things are old,
Imagine that.
but the question becomes, in each year, there may be higher priority items, right?
Yeah. I'm saying that
And the
there's-
reality is some of it has happened. For instance, we did create a DPW, so that
We
was
did, in fact.
towards doing that. And we knew going into it that there would be compromises that would need to be made. And one of them was the cemetery.
Yep. We
So-
almost had that one.
So we're further along than where we started, and the last 10% sometimes takes the longest.
Well, and like I said, sometimes other things become priorities. And this takes a back seat. We don't have unlimited resources.
That's for sure. We don't have resources,
Yeah.
but we have Mike now.
Well, now we have 2 TAs, so maybe that'll help out. or an interim finance director, or a random consultant walking around the place. I don't know what the heck Carl is up
Right.
to these days. Okay, website, any comments on the website? Everybody sees it as a priority, we're good?
Right, and case in point, we have the funding.
Case in
From
point,
town
we have the
meeting.
funding, yes. I don't know how far that funding is gonna do, but we have it. And so the key thing there will be ultimately working with Pacific Plus consultant to modify their website. And I think, I've been told, I don't know if this is true, that in the third year, they offer that service. This is our third year. So we're good there. Technology. The only thing I have there is we really need to be serious about getting town household email addresses. I mean, I don't see how we can communicate effectively without them. And I tried to reach somebody on the cemetery commission and I couldn't, there's no email address. So certainly we should start with people who work for the town as volunteers. But there needs to be, to me, there needs to be a campaign to get that. It's going to underpin everything we do off the website in terms of communicating with the residents. So that doesn't require tech. I'm not sure. I think that requires going out and chasing people down.
Well, it requires people that opt in. There are gonna be some people that are just not, won't be willing to give you any.
Well, but we haven't given anybody a reason to opt in. We haven't gone out and said we are moving our communications platform to digital. And as a result, it would be very important for us to have your email addresses or cell phone for text, just for emergency notifications in other important town business. And we just haven't done it. You know, we have the opt-in clause on the website that's buried, 35 pages in. But I think we need to have a sustained effort to get their email addresses. Certainly the schools are successful. So it's not a question, to me, it's not a question of privacy or being hounded by unwanted emails. But I just don't know how this works without having that information. I mean, we all communicate by email and text.
Again, you can't force people, so they either opt in or not. So you can do
I agree.
campaign, you could tell people who are looking for email addresses, we'll have privacy notices up there, and then people either opt in or don't.
Yep, okay. I'm happy to leave it to other people to execute the plan with a campaign and see what we can do. Like I said, schools get it.
Yeah, well, probably because it's part of the registration process.
Yeah, but we can't do it through the, I've been told several times, we can't do it through the census by our town clerk, so we have to have a separate effort.
Right.
So the technology stuff obviously is postponed until we have somebody who can do the technology.
Thank you.
And Carl, you saw my response to the regional school issue, right?
Yes.
But I certainly worth thinking about. Okay. Then the rest of it really has to do with us defining our role, establishing policies that we've implemented over the past 5 or 6 years, then working with the warrant committee to help them sort through their role. And then the town meeting format is something that I think is important, to turn the town meeting into a town meeting that explains our goals, our objectives and priorities, how that affects the budget. And then ultimately it'll give the residents who attend town meeting an understanding of what we're trying to do and a basis for voting yes or no on our spending. And obviously all that's got to be coordinated with warrant committee. That's about it.
Bob, I wonder if, since we have Cam here, if he would have any thoughts about a good way to start a discussion around bringing the budget forward, to town meeting, streamlining the budget, looking at the blue book, revisiting the blue book, just a good way to just to start that discussion, and if that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
I actually think Cam has done a little bit of work in this area. Cam, you want to bring people up to date?
Yeah, I mean, the warrant committee itself is really eager to improve the functioning of the committee and really focus on what we should be focusing on, and not on the sort of irrelevant processes and procedures that seem to constrain us a lot. I think we're really willing to consider a sort of fundamental review. One of the challenges we have is that even there's not a clear perception of really what the function of the warrant committee is. So some people perceive it as a finance committee. Others perceive it as a sort of a congressional budget office, if you like, something more like a sort of a review of the financial policies of the town, and coming in and taking a position on individual items. And then another group seem to think that really the warrant committee should be just devoted to streamlining the performance of the town meeting and reviewing the warrants that relate to the town meeting, and that should be the focus. So even in terms of focus, we're not really clear on what we should be doing. So I think that there's an openness within the committee to see change and to really actively participate in that.
So in a sense, Cam has sort of started the process on his end. I think our job will be to sort of help coordinate and between the Board of Selectmen and the warrant committee, and to come to a good understanding of roles and responsibilities.
Right. And one other area, Bob, I think that the warrant committee would appreciate is a sort of sense of trying to get some real support from the administration. Now, I understand all the constraints that we've been subject to up until now, but a part-time committee consisting mostly of people who work full-time is not going to be a committee that really fundamentally drills down on all expenditures in the town and comes up with a process for vetting them. It's just too much, and I think that somehow we've got to focus our efforts to really see where we add most value.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, Cam. I think it's very difficult. I mean, as it is, we spend, our town administrator and staff on that side spend months putting this stuff together. So when we go to town meeting, as I indicated, the guy or woman who is most knowledgeable about the budget is essentially the town administrator, who's gone through all the detail with all the direct reports. So I mean, that needs to be recognized, and I think in the old days there was this audit function on the town administrator. It's not clear to me that that's the right role, but that's I think that's a further discussion. If you go back a year or two with Chris, Chris was taking a great deal of time, I think, to talk to the warrant committee in particular, attend their meetings and keep them briefed on what was going on. But we've really moved the needle on this process. I mean, going back to 2019, I think we were the first board that actually set objectives and priorities for the town. So we have like 5 years under our belt at this point. And I think that just changes the dynamic. We didn't have that sort of overview leadership that I think this particular board has tried to adopt. So I'm hoping that working together, being thoughtful, understanding a little bit of the history, understanding the limitations of people in volunteer positions on these boards, and coming up with a sensible set of value adds to the town. I think that'd be incredibly worthwhile. So enough said.
Bob, may I quickly add that it would make sense to me anyway to involve Jim in this discussion from the get-go, because the warrant committee is actually appointed by the moderator. It's my understanding that good, bad, or indifferent, I want to say founding fathers for lack of better expression, but in days of yore, there was a conscientious effort to keep the warrant committee separate from the Board of Selectmen so that agendas could not get, for lack of a better word, rammed through. So there is a separation of church and state. And while everything you're talking about is very noble, it just needs to have everyone who's a stakeholder involved.
Yeah, as I mentioned the last time, I just have to reach out to Jim, Dave. You know,
Yeah. Oh, it's not going to be hard. It just needs to be done.
yeah. But I mean, this, to me, yes, I agree. And the fact that we work together doesn't mean we're not independent.
No,
Well,
but Bob, the warrant committee does have a role, and if the warrant committee is confused about what their role is, you know, all towns have warrant/finance committees, and it is the responsibility of the members of that committee to understand the composition of the budget so that they can make a recommendation to the town to vote up or down. It doesn't mean they need to put the budget together. That is the responsibility of the town departments.
Yep.
There should just be discussion, and they should understand it, and they should be giving the town administrator somewhat a perspective of potentially where the citizens may be coming in on that issue. And that's what the role is. It's up, you know, they need to take the information that they're given. If they don't have sufficient information, they should ask for it. And then they make a recommendation to the town. That's what the town's looking for. The town wants to know that somebody other than the Board of Selectmen has looked at what's being requested and finds it reasonable, period.
Okay, so we'll just take the tape of this and we'll run it like the next.
I am happy to go talk to the warrant committee. You know, I served on it for like 9 years.
I know you did, and I know that whole history. The question here is, we need to re-engage. The people on the warrant committee are limited in time. And yes, in order to do what you suggest, they need to understand what's going on. And I think we started that process with Chris 2 years ago. And so we just need to reboot that process,
Right.
and make sure that as we go through the build process, all stakeholders and people who have it will have a responsibility, get the information they need. That just didn't happen.
Right,
On the
and
other
I
hand,
also think we could improve it. I think we could, you know, reinstate the meetings at the beginning, and at those meetings, just agree on the guidelines and the philosophy for putting together the budget. And, you know, to me, the most frustrating thing is it's very difficult to look at a budget piecemeal. Like
Yes.
if Board of Health comes in and wants one person, and then DPW comes in and needs 2 people, it's hard to approve those in silos. You know, you really need to pull everything together and then say, okay, where are we? Does this work? Does this not work? Where do we have to scale back? So that's always been my frustration with the process. And I think Chris did a great job when he came in of changing that, so you were looking at it in totality from at a much earlier point.
Yeah, and so Chris's view was, you put together the budget and you highlight, you know, ups and downs and the whys. but you do that at a much more, at a kind of a macro level
Right.
compared to looking at, individual line items in an accounting spreadsheet.
Right,
And
because
so,
it's so hard.
and so the budget presentation has to match the Board of Selectmen's presentation. And so that it's aligned. But I don't know the depth that we need to go into. I don't know if you have to look at it on the department level. I think all that stuff needs to be worked through so that we give the residents sufficient information to make informed decisions about spending.
I agree in general with what both Rob and Bob have said. So I don't really have any issue with that. One of the bigger issues, I think, is the expectations on the warrant committee. People come in and expect us to do an amazing job, and things like trying to work out what capital equipment, whether a recommendation to buy a particular piece of capital equipment is a smart one or not, is a very difficult one for us to really drill down on, particularly since we don't have the professional skills in that space. And there are just so many different ones, whether it's HVAC, whether it's trucks or various machinery. That's really detailed stuff, and yet there have been occasions when there's been an expectation that that the warrant committee go out and validate all of those real details, and that's really difficult for us to do.
Well, that should be the capital budget's responsibility, no?
Right, I think that's why it's very important to have this meeting up front with capital, warrant, Board of Selectmen, so that the roles and responsibilities are understood. And then,
Bob,
one meeting doesn't do it. I think there needs to be a couple of follow-up meetings during the season.
Crazy.
Just so that we're all on the same page.
John?
So Bob, when I served on the warrant committee, the very first thing that we were handed was the handbook, and the handbook of warrant committees that are available at the state level, the training that's available at the state level. You were required to sit through the training. You were required to attend the meetings back then. Obviously, there was no Zoom. It was mandatory attendance at a Saturday morning type of a lecture, and that was required. You to literally to join the warrant committee in Wellesley, you had to sit through these X number of training sessions, and then the manual was literally handed to you on day one. The manual laid out the objectives, and Cam, quite to the contrary, you as the member, let me just rephrase it. We as the members of the Finance and Budget Committee, which was called advisory in the town of Wellesley, were required to have done all the due diligence on all capital items and all spending. So, and I know that varies from town to town. I know that a representative town government, which Wellesley is compared to a general election, a general representation in Dover is a bit different, but the expectations for the advisory committee in Wellesley were extremely high. So you had, for 2.5 years, I was the chair of general government, you literally had to know how much the tires on the trucks were costing, how many miles they got out of the tires on the trucks, and who provided the best cost benefit for the tires that were purchased. So again, to what everybody is saying, what are the expectations? Are the expectations communicated? And I think most importantly, Cam, we have to all be on the same page. So if we're not on the same page, we can certainly get there. We just have to all decide what that page looks like.
We also need to
Exactly.
respect the
I
time of
fully agree
volunteers,
with that.
folks.
I fully agree with that, John. But really, bringing Wellesley expectations onto Dover aren't exactly helpful unless you set up the committee to function in that way. And just as an illustration of that, I had absolutely zero education in the role of the warrant committee when I became a member. It was I was told it's going to be learning by doing, and for the first year you'll be lost, but with time you'll work it out. And that's, I don't think, a particularly good way to run a railroad, but that's the way we've been working. And so if we want to get a much more disciplined and active grouping, I think you're going to have to work a lot more on that training. And B, you need to come up with a way to make sure that the people on the committee have the time to actually do the work.
Correct. You have to respect the volunteers. You have to respect that these people are doing this out of a community sense, and people are time limited. We have this problem. Actually, as a board of selectmen, we're saying we can't rely on volunteers to do the critical functions of the town. We can't, and so that needs to be a consideration. It needs to be doable by the people on the committee. But again, all this is to be worked out. But I think the discussion is very healthy.
And it's all not going to be fixed in year one.
It clearly is not going to be fixed in year one.
It's
Maybe year 1.5.
It's a gradual process. And, Cam, I offered this to Rob, I've offered it. I am more than happy to come and talk to the committee about, my experience and what we did, because it was a little different when I was on it. The work was much more spread out.
Right, and that's, of course, last year was a particularly challenging year for us all.
Yes, we understand that, Kim.
And I guess we shouldn't allow what happened last year to be the measure of the way we go forward. But even so, I think it would be helpful to have even just a list of people who have experience on the warrant committee in the past, who new members can call up and talk it through with.
Right.
I think that would be a great help as well.
Okay.
And maybe we could put together a list of mentors.
Yeah, absolutely. That I think would be a great thing.
Some of them aren't in town anymore, Robin.
Right, but unfortunately some are, but in the cemetery.
Some of them are there too, yes.
Can we communicate with them?
We can, but we need a special consultant.
We'll have to have a seance together.
Specializes in seances.
I
got one more thing, guys.
Michael, are you sure you will still want to do this?
His anchor was dropped yesterday.
Oh God, is there is there a 5-day clause or a 7-day clause in his contract?
No.
You can get out.
Non-refundable, he's ours. Good or ill.
Did they communicate with graveyards in Easton, Mike? I can't say that was my resume.
I would like to set a timeline with an end date in December for having the financial work done. Not January, not February, but December. I can't understand why we can't get this done by December.
Well, Bob, what is your definition of done? Because my definition of done is to pull together the budget, just like Chris used to do by the end of December, so that you have something to vet and then refine.
So maybe that needs to be done sooner, because then Warren has to, take a look.
But
what I'm trying to get to is.
But what I'm saying, you at this point, I would say it's too late, because we need to start. I firmly believe that if the budget, if the planning works as it is intended to work, we should have a budget. And as Chris had to do, also there were placeholders for some of the numbers.
Yes,
because we
yes,
simply
exactly.
didn't have them. But
Yes.
if, you know, we made an assumption about healthcare increases, we made an assumption about the retirement, Norfolk retirement. There were certain things that we had to make assumptions, but we had, before we broke for Christmas, we had the budget pulled together.
We
So
did.
come January 1st, you know, with the highlights, these are the additional FTEs that are in the budget. This is the total overage, all that kinds of stuff, so that January 1st, you can begin vetting what you have and making changes so
And
that,
making preparation for town meeting.
well, first you need garbage in, garbage out. The budget needs to be vetted. And that's part of your prep for town meeting. And that's going to take a month or two. And then by, you know, I would say by the end of February, which should be 3 weeks before the open hearing, you should have a pretty solid budget. That is it. But you need, you know, you need this vetting process, because we need to understand what, do we have excess capacity in the, you know, that's our goal, to not maximize the tax levy. So
But
we want to
this
make sure we
shouldn't
get
be
that
done in
excess.
isolation, right? The vetting process should take place between now and December. By December, with the exception of having
I don't know.
placeholders.
The reality, I put budgets together all the time.
So
Never
did
work.
I.
Never work. Well, then you're a lot better at it than me. You know, it always came together, and then it was what everybody wanted. And we had limited resources, and then we had to push back and say to people, you can't get X, you can't get Y. You know, this doesn't work. And then it got refined to a point where we could live with the budget. And then that's what got presented to the board of directors, who then had a whole lot of their own questions.
Yep. We still should have a target.
Right, but I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm just saying what's realistic is by the end of December to have your first real full budget, in my opinion.
And we should have all the capital budget items resolved.
You may or you may not. I mean, you know, you're
no,
gonna
that's
have.
not,
you're
no,
gonna
no,
have
that's
what-
not how it works, right? It works, here's the deadline. Get the work
And-
done.
Right, but Bob, the reality is, because we're not in utopia as much as we'd like to be, the reality is you can't always get all the information that you need. So you're gonna have the best information that you can get, and there will still be some assumptions in it.
That's fine. That happens. I agree. That's part of the process. But I mean, we ran into February on some of this stuff.
Well, again, last year was particularly bad. Last year was not indicative of the way things typically happened for a whole lot of reasons. You know, warrant, there was, meetings started later. I don't know what happened last year. It
It
was,
was a kerfluffle.
right.
So we're trying to undo the kerfluffle. And in order to do that, people need guidelines and deadlines. It's been way too loosey-goosey. And without us providing direction and what we think is appropriate for the town and what the town needs to do, you're gonna get into stagnation. We're gonna continue to do what we've always done. And that's not good. And so you need to have this stuff pretty well baked by the end of December. And then the preparation for the town meeting is about the presentation materials and making the pitch and the warrant articles. Speaking of warrant articles, we start in November. Why do we start in November?
Again, bylaws, you know, the town is governed by our bylaws. Our bylaws say
Bylaws
the
say we
warrant
should issue
opens,
warrants.
I can't remember, December 21st, is that it, Carl? And it closes in January?
Yeah,
Right,
so you know what may be helpful, since, Michael's not been here quite 48 hours.
He's an expert. He's an expert on all this stuff now.
Well, he will be by the end of the week, but I could pull out our budget schedule from last year for him because he hasn't seen that yet.
that we never abided by.
No, but we can look at that and sort of say, okay, come back to you with what we think is a doable, because at the end of the day, we can promise anything, but if it's not doable, and we're still filling positions, and even when those positions are filled, there's still going to be individuals who are learning their roles, learning the ropes, and so forth. So, we're still in for a challenging next year in that regard. But what may be helpful, just so Michael can see and have something in front of him before we, Robin has her discussion with the two financial committees, and we talk about not only roles and responsibilities, but also timing and what makes sense. The December, given we have a May town meeting, December is really, I would say, a very challenging day to have it done by. Particularly, this coming year where there's a lot of new actors involved. But rather than just guess at something, if we could have a little time, Michael and I, to look at this and come back to you with a proposed schedule,
No problem, Paul.
may be helpful.
That's a good idea.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in our subcommittee with town meeting, this similar discussion framework came up. And it's not just anyone on the warrant committee, board of selectmen, or capital budget. It's also all the committees underneath. And I can tell you that there's no committee knows what to do and when to do it by. So if you have a warrant article for a megaffilator and it's going to cost $100,000, it would be very nice if that was put on the radar as soon as you know that you're going to be bringing that warrant forth. But there's no document for a citizen or a town board to follow in the process of bringing a warrant forward. And so that's this, when the three committees get together, broadening that timeline to having a one-page handout to say, if you have a warrant article and you're a town committee, please follow this. If your citizens petition, please follow this. That maybe they're the same, but the idea is that all the volunteers trying to help run the town, their lives will be made a lot easier if the communication out to the general public or the boards who don't understand what the warrant committee is going through and et cetera. If we just tell them what to do and when to do it, I think everyone's lives are going to be made a lot easier.
That generally works, Dave.
Yeah, and I would say if it's not in the document that I'm thinking of, that from our schedule from last year, Dave, we'll make sure it's in the document, but I'm reasonably certain that those schedules for both boards and committees and citizens are in our schedule that we've had.
Is that a change, Carl? Because when I was on capital budget and I got guidance, it was pretty vague.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a change, but I'm pretty clear that it's in there because I remember we had a lot of what I'll call placeholders, boards and committees that said we might need this. So I don't know if I was tracking it at the time because I came in January, and so I had a lot of sort of tentative or pending warrant articles that then as we got through the process a little bit, they ended up dropping off. You may remember, planning I think had 5 or 6 articles, as I recall, that they asked us to sort of hold a place for. And again, as you sort of vet those through, you fine tune them and you find out which ones really need to go forward and which ones don't. So we'll make sure that's on the list, but I'm pretty certain that that's part of the schedule that we used this past year.
Super. Then maybe it's just the communication piece, Carl, and making sure that every board has it, and then it's on the website. And if you want to do a citizen's petition with a new website, maybe just a little line, citizens petitions, this is what you need to do and when do you need to do it? That type of thing, because again, sorry, Bob, but in our subcommittee, we talked about the waste of time collectively and the angst of having articles put on a warrant, start the review process, spend an inordinate amount of time, and then you get the, just kidding. Well, I don't know about you, but
Not quite just kidding, Dave. But we also talked in that TMG group about, how enforcement and accountability, right?
yes,
And there needs to be, if you do this stuff and it doesn't work, then we were talking about having the warrant committee sort of dismiss articles because people didn't follow the procedures. It just needs to tighten, just needs to be tightened up. And I agree, it starts with clear direction to the boards and committees of the town. Couldn't agree more. Well, have we gone through the ringer on this? Are we done? What's the story? What do you guys feel like?
Yeah, so I think the timelines would be great. Looking at that. I agree with the priorities. So maybe we take these priorities and turn them into goals.
I think the next step is to pare this down to our key priorities and maybe the guys with the M's, and then syndicate that
Right.
boards and committees for comment. I give them 2 weeks, and sort of in early August, then we should have the information back. We should have another meeting, finalized, and we're done with this phase. That sound about doable? Sound about right?
Right, and then for us as a board, we should document this, how we go about doing this.
Yes.
We've talked about doing that and we haven't done that yet, and also documenting the TA evaluation process.
Yes, absolutely. Do we need a scribe?
Right.
Okay. Everybody good? John, you good?
I'm good. I'm good. I think for the bulk of the heavy lifting, Bob, for this year, it's going to be a combination of synthesizing the things that we are expecting with what we can actually deliver.
Yep.
Or with everybody, with all the, with
all
where
the
we are.
moving parts, John.
Yeah, with where we are, with moving parts, with the things that we have to accept, and then it's a constant. From our standpoint, from the board's standpoint, it's a constant reflection on. We're looking at something that's constantly changing. This organization has a life, and it creates things that oftentimes we don't see coming. So like every organization that we all have been a part of. So it's a management role, and it's establishing expectations.
And right now we're facing big challenges because of staffing, and people, and loss of institutional knowledge in the case of the warrant committee. So yeah, we have some ground to recover. Okay. Well, this wasn't as much fun as sitting in the town hall, making fun of Robin for missing the donuts.
Yeah, but you know what? I promised Michael and Carl that.
Are you going to get them donuts?
That we would have, that we need to schedule one morning meeting, and I will get the donuts. They promised me there were no more vacations this
All right, folks.
this summer, so.
Just for
Carl,
the
Mike,
record,
you guys clear?
Yes.
Although, Carl, do you come in on Fridays? Fridays is okay.
I have a very flexible schedule when it comes around food.
Especially where donuts are
when
involved.
donuts are
Yeah.
involved. Yeah. When donuts are not involved on Wednesdays, he is nowhere to be found.
He's
Check
at the gym
out.
working out. Okay, folks, thank you for your time.
All right, thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
for participating, your thoughts. I just need a motion to adjourn.
Motioned.
Need a
Seconded.
second? Robin, you second?
Sure, John second.
Oh, I thought he made the motion.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye, Bob Springett.
Aye, John Jeffries.
Hi, Robin Hunter.
Everybody have a great weekend.
Thank
you.
again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So
Bye-bye.